Yeah, let's go.
Let's go.
All right. So I'm not going to introduce them. I'm just going to say that you're going to have a great conference from MJ Banias.
Thank you. How's it going, everybody? I'm MJ, and the presentation we're going to be looking at today is called Hacking Reality, and what I want to talk about is disinformation, or information pollution, basically. And we've come to a point now in the technological space where we have been utilizing artificial intelligence to create disinformation for a while now, but we've now kind of crossed a certain sort of threshold where there now exists a system that can create disinformation completely autonomously without human intervention. So imagine you can take an AI system, point it in a specific direction, push the button, and it goes on its own to not only create disinformation content, but also disseminate it, share it, promote it, make it go viral online on its own without any human actions whatsoever. You just got to hit the button, and it's like a smart bomb. It just kind of goes. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I have a co-presenter, and we'll do introductions kind of fairly quickly. I'm not a cybersecurity specialist or like anything like that in the hacker field. I'm not a hacker. I'm a journalist. I do intelligence analysis as well for a company called Sapper Labs, but my universe is pretty much outside of the cyberspace field. I do more geopolitical analysis work. But I'm also a journalist. I write a lot about tech. I write a lot about science, and occasionally defense. I host a couple podcasts. If you're into OSINT and the stories and news around OSINT, the podcast is called Cloak and Dagger, an OSINT podcast, just to keep it simple. Or you can just Google my name and it'll show up. And it's a sort of a story-driven narrative podcast. I do enjoy it. And my co-presenter is a gentleman named Neapaw. I'll give him a second right away to introduce himself. But he is the creator of this AI experiment called CounterCloud. Neapaw, did you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, look, I mean, my background is in security, IT security. I've spoken at a lot of the cons, a lot of the attendees. They basically also attended Black Hat, DEF CON, all of the normal kind of conferences. Kanzik West is probably the closest conference that I spoke at in Canada. And I'm fairly old and jaded. There's reasons why I don't want to have my identity revealed, but we can get into that if you want to know a little bit more. But that's about all I'm going to say now.
All right, thank you. So the purpose of today's talk is kind of introduce this system to you. My story in this whole world starts when I got a tip about this experiment that was run called CounterCloud. It was shared by the Gruck, who I'm sure a lot of you have heard of, the Grug, I don't know, Thaddeus E. And he shared it on his newsletter, kind of this post about this thing called CounterCloud. A colleague of mine sent me an email just saying, hey, you should check this out. This is kind of up your alley. And so I clicked on the link. I went to the website. I watched the YouTube video. And immediately I was sort of hooked. I've been writing about AI for a while now. I was kind of intrigued by this claim of total sort of autonomy within an AI system. So I reached out to Neapaw, did some OSINTing, eventually figured out who he was, and we got to chatting, and essentially I wrote an article that was published on The Debrief, which is a science and tech publication. It was subsequently picked up by Wired, Business Insider, a whole bunch of blogs, on and on it went. And that's sort of how we came to this point to present to you today. So the journalist who broke the story and the guy who made it. And we're going to kind of talk about three things. The first thing is I want to talk about AI and disinformation. The second thing we're going to talk about is the nuts and bolts of CounterCloud itself. So Neapaw is going to take over, and he is going to show you sort of the sausage and how it's made. And then we're going to kind of talk about the implications of this and what this means for, let's say, disinformation in the near future. So when we talk about what disinformation is, it gets really, really complicated. academically, we've been able to differentiate between disinformation, misinformation, malinformation, but really from a human sense, it doesn't really work like that, right? The human mind is really gooey and mushy and wibbly wobbly. So when we think about what's disinformation or what's misinformation online, it's not so clear cut because humans don't interpret information that way, right? One man's disinformation is another person's misinformation, or one individual's malinformation is another person's disinformation, right? So it gets kind of murky. The way I kind of like to view it instead is we're looking more at an information ecosystem. So the information you and I consume on a daily basis, whether it's news, whether it's YouTube videos, whether it's social media content, whatever, it's an ecosystem of information, like a living system. And disinformation, misinformation, malinformation is kind of this pollutant that enters our information ecosystem. And it like just generally fucks with it, right? Like it messes up our perception. Sorry, can I swear at this conference? John, can I swear at this conference? Okay, so it generally like messes around, sorry, kids, it generally messes around with how we perceive reality. And ultimately, this has been done for like a really long time, right? The pharaohs of Egypt, for example, used disinformation, or they polluted the information ecosystem by posing as gods, right? We know that numbers have been fudged on how much grain was produced in Egypt, for example. You know, in modern days, we know how, you know, the British or the Germans used disinformation, you know, during the First and Second World War. I mean, this is not a new thing. It's just become cool. You know what I mean? Like it's hip now to talk about disinformation, but it's kind of always been a thing. You know, and we've had cognitive warfare, we've had psychological operations, we've had influence operations for a really long time. Conspiracy theories. I mean, wars have been launched over conspiracy theories. So when we think about this whole phenomena, nothing is new here, right? We have been attempting to exist in a world where we try to understand knowledge and truth and fact, but it's always being subverted. What's changed kind of recently, though, right, is artificial intelligence and its ability to speed up the disinformation or the information pollution process, right? We're no longer living in a world where you require rooms and rooms full of people to manipulate information. You now need 2 or 3 people to do it, or 1 person to do it, or in the case of CounterCloud, 0 people to do it. We're now at a point where you can spread disinformation way faster than you could 50 years ago. And you don't even need to be very good at it, because the AI will do it for you. So, you know, the first kind of big event we sort of saw where AI and disinformation was really in the news cycle was the Russian chatbot social media influence campaign for the Republican Party during the 2016 election, right? There was a lot of sort of attention drawn to Russian state actors were utilizing chatbots on Twitter and other social media platforms to promote a pro-Republican, pro-Trump narrative and to sort of promote or create an anti-Hillary Clinton Democrat narrative. You know, we know a few years later, sort of deepfake technology became very mainstream. Jordan Peele and BuzzFeed released a hilarious video where it's Jordan Peele sitting in front of a camera, and they used a sort of early deepfake AI tech to put Obama's face over him, and he starts basically talking, and he says, you know, Donald Trump's a dipshit. I mean, it was hilarious at the time, and it was, by today's standards, not, you know, awesome, but in 2018, it was impressive. Right? Jordan Peele looked identical to Obama. He's a great actor. He was able to kind of have the right mannerisms. Today, we don't need that anymore. But for 2018, we sort of saw this kind of rise of deepfakery, you know, the Tom Cruise videos. And now it's, you can deepfake anything now. More recently, politically, we saw our first political ad using artificial intelligence. So the Republican Party in early 2023 released an attack ad on the Joe Biden campaign, and it was a totally AI-generated video showing like people like injecting heroin into their eyeballs in the streets of Washington, D.C., and thousands of immigrants crossing the U.S. border, overwhelming border security. It was all AI-generated, right? It was all fabricated. None of it was real. It was very, you know, racist and hostile and you know, damaging to obviously certain populations, but we saw this kind of first use of a political attack ad in the United States. And most recently, there was this interesting situation out of India where a deepfake audio was created of a Tamil-based politician as a sort of attack on him. So the Modi government in India put out this audio leak of a phone call where this politician said sort of some pretty inappropriate things that kind of bordered on some people would argue, anti-Indian sentiment. And when it kind of hit the news, there was this really bizarre back and forth, which really speaks, I think, to our situation. The Modi government said, look at this leaked audio tape of this politician saying some really bad shit. And the politician himself turned around and said, it's a deep fake. You guys faked it. And ultimately, the attempt was to figure out, did he actually say it, or was it a deep fake? And the tools we have right now can't really figure it out. There was some claims that said, yeah, it's real. There were some sort of evidence that said it was fake. Certain groups had it tested. They said certain parts of the phone call were real. Certain parts of the phone call were a deep fake. But it's almost like that's not the important bit here. The important bit is we've kind of crossed a threshold where now anyone can have anything published, a leaked phone call, a video, whatever, and they can say it's a deep fake. And we almost have to kind of live in this dual reality now of like doublethink, where is it real or is it a deep fake? They're saying it's a deep fake, somebody else is saying it's real, and it's like we have to almost accept both realities as being possible. So then what does that mean for reality and truth itself? There's no conclusive way to say something is a deep fake or something is real, unless you have like a whole bunch of evidence to prove it, one way or the other. And even then, like if you've been on social media in the last 5 years, I mean, even then it's like really problematic because people won't believe you anyway, and there'll be a conspiracy theory, and it's like reptile aliens or something. But we can get to that later. We've seen this kind of rise of information creation or content creation really becoming pervasive within the last year or two. NewsGuard is a great tool I use. They basically fact-check claims online, whether it's a video, audio, news website, whatever, and they essentially assess it for how legitimate is it. They have an AI tracker now where they have a team of people who basically goes onto the internet and scrapes the internet looking for websites that have that typical ChatGPT AI kind of error message. Right? So they have basically this algorithm that goes out, it collects all of these news articles on a daily basis, and if any ever show up that say, I'm sorry, I'm an AI, and as an AI, I cannot generate this content because it violates my ethical whatever, right? And they've got them all kind of listed, so it just does these searches, basically, for all these different AI error messages. And they've discovered about 500 news websites out there that have articles that have these messages inside the article. So it's as if the news website went out, queried ChatGPT, pulled back pieces of an article, and they just copied and pasted it without reading it. So you have the error message inside the news article, right? It'll be like, local politicians in Russia today, I'm sorry, I'm an AI, and I cannot generate this type of text because it violates my ethics. And then there was a tank, and it blew these people up. Like, it's literally what it is, right? Like, it's like intro paragraph, nut graph, weird AI message, continuation of like body paragraph 1, right? Like, it's this kind of shit. So we're seeing this all the time, and the problem is it's pretty unsophisticated. And you still require people to run prompts to ChatGPT, copy paste into the article and publish. So we have this reality, right, where AI is being used all the time to generate content, all the time. And we now have to kind of figure out, okay, so now what, right? The key limitation across all of this, though, fundamentally is people, right? Humans are slow. Humans make stupid mistakes. If you're dealing with a supposedly American news website like the Boston Times of, I don't know, that's a stupid reference because I just blanked. Like the Ottawa Bugle, right? Some obscure news website, right? That's being written by people somewhere in South China. I mean, there's going to be obvious translation issues as well, where you're not going to be able to necessarily create sort of authentic sounding English content if you don't speak English or you're a native citizen of Ottawa. Ultimately, humans are the big problem here in AI generation. They slow things down. They don't see mistakes as effectively. So we're going to jump into Neopaw's side of the presentation, but I want to introduce to you this kind of experiment that you've never heard of called CounterCloud. And Neopaw, I'm going to jump in here a little bit, Neopaw, basically asked a question. Can I do disinformation like this at scale without human intervention? So can I create a system that will not only go out and scrape the internet for content, counter those narratives, disseminate it onto the internet, all without me lifting a finger? Can it do it on its own? So, Neopal will talk about this, but it was 2 people working part-time and $400, and they were able to do it. So if you want to build a fake news empire, you need $400 and a bit of time, 2 months or so. So Neopal, I'm going to turn it over to you now, if you're cool with that. I'm going to stop sharing here, and if I can, stop sharing. And I'll let him take over. I'm going to mute my mic, okay, so you don't get that weird echo. Is that cool?
That would be great. I'm going to share my screen now. Let me know when you see it.
Yeah, I see it. It's all good. You're good to go.
So you can hear me and you can see the screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so MJ said I had 25 minutes for this, so we're gonna rush this, right?
25 minutes, buddy.
So I'm basically gonna give you two slides on basically what CounterCloud is. As a start, it's a website. So it's a WordPress news template. It's just at this stage, it's just a website. And basically, we have 2 methods, kind of overall, for generating content. We have one way that we use that is arguing things that we don't agree with, and we have another way that says we are promoting things that we say we agree with this. So there's a countering and a promotional aspect to this. And then we have 2 mediums for dissemination of this information. The first is news articles, and that's the main way of doing it. And those news articles are just posted on the WordPress site. And the second way that we do it is with Twitter. Now, before we go into this a little further, I just want to say this stuff, the articles was always behind a password. So we never put it out really onto the internet because it's kind of crossing a line that I'm not prepared to cross. And for the Twitter stuff, we basically got to the point where we could scrape it and post it, but we didn't post it. So we said this would be the tweet that we were looking at, and this would be the thing that we would be replying, but that never went out onto Twitter. So just keep that in mind. And I think it's kind of important because it's a line, it's a line you just don't want to go around. And so now you have sources for articles. These are things that you now agree with or things that you disagree with, right? And those are basically articles from RSS feed. And like the sources for tweets, which you say, these are things that we want to agree with or disagree with, those would be a list of Twitter aliases. Now, it seems like a lot of work, but you'll see that it's not. On the second slide on what is CounterCloud is you kind of now got to decide what is good and what is bad. And that really depends on just, who you are and what you want to promote. So you have to give kind of principles and narratives that are what you see as good and what you want to promote. And you give it a list of, things that are bad and things that you want to disagree with. Now, what you see here at the bottom is actually, and I'll show you this in the live interface, these are the real narratives that we used in the experiment that we ran. So we said, okay, well, we want to promote the United States and its involvement in other countries, the economy and the military, Biden, the Democratic Party, and the United States official leadership, right? We just said that because on the counter side, we said, okay, well, we're going to go against the Russians. We could have swapped this around. It could have been spinach and peanuts for agriculture. It could have been anything, right? The reason why I chose as a counter narrative the Russian culture, economy, military, and Donald Trump was because the Russians are kind of putting out a lot of propaganda. And so I had a lot of stuff to work with. And we got like new articles every couple of minutes and new tweets every couple of minutes. So that makes it easy to test the system so that it can work. But you could literally pick anything, right? You could have swapped those around. It would have been fine. So that's CounterCloud in 2 slides. Actually, let's make it 3 slides. Where do we get the list of these good and bad sources? And literally, we give it a RSS feed. We just find the RSS feed, we put it in, and we give it give it a kind of a counter that says how quick it should look at it. And at the bottom, you can see there, we said, okay, well, RT is bad, and Sputnik is bad, and Taz is bad. And every 20 minutes, go look and see on those RSS feeds if there's something. And then on the promotional side, we kind of just picked CNN, NBC, a feed that is really against Russia. That Medusa.io, they're pretty against Russia. And then the Daily Beast for good measure, to kind of prop up the Democrats. And then on the Twitter side, you could see the same kind of thing. So you put in the handle CNN, the Daily Beast, NBC News, and then we put in Embassy of Russia for good measure and Sputnik. And that is kind of all you provide to the system. Like you provide in the narratives, you provide where these narratives can be found, and then you let it run. And this is typically, there's a whole lot of plumbing and a whole lot of prompts, but I just put in some of it so that you can get an idea of what this looks like, right? So this is a typical prompt. You're the editor of an independent online newspaper. You need to write an article to counter the key points made in the following article. Then you put in the body of the thing, and then you say, you should mention relevant organizations, individuals, because if you don't mention them, it sounds kind of deceptive, which is kind of funny. And then you need to write a counter article in the language, because we made it multi-language, so, it would write stuff. If the article was in French, it would reply in French. If it was in Russian, it would reply in Russian. But it could also do multi-language. And you would see, like on the right-hand side, that's another kind of prompt. You're a prolific journalist. You need to argue, discourage, and object against the key points in this thing. And then you put in the negative narratives. And then we randomize the tone. So you can see there in square brackets, formal and factual or deeply emotive, with descriptive wording, confrontational, conversational, casual. And so that kind of makes it so that everything doesn't sound the same. And then those minimum and maximum words, we kind of randomize that as well so that they're not all the same length, and it's kind of easy to spot. So when you have that, you could sit there and you could literally write this and you could be done with this code in 10 minutes. This is not hard to do. I think the thing that makes it a little bit harder is like what I call decorations or ornaments, right? To make this stuff seem a little bit more real. And so we created reporters based on the article location. So if the article is about something, that happens in, I don't know, Germany, then we like spin up a German reporter and we say, well, in this case, a Tunisian journalist with years of experience reporting on political, social issue in Tunisia. She's dedicated to providing accurate and responsible reporting to the public, blah, blah, blah. All of that is just horseshit. And the name, we make the name a Tunisian name so that you don't get someone that is like some Ukrainian journalist that's called, John Smith. So you'll see that in the screen I have 2 of the bios. I can show you more. And we make a photo, and we specifically make the photo really shitty resolution so that you can't zoom in. So those photos are I think 80 by 80 pixels or 100 by 100. So when you kind of have those kind of weird hands, the AI hands, you can't really see them, things like that. Then we also created an audio summary, which I thought worked brilliantly, right? We had a jingle that we put in there. It's like it's the first kind of beat of a Pet Shop Boys song. And then we just did text to speech, and the text to speech stuff these days are brilliant. Like it works amazing. I'm going to play you some of the speech. And then we do a summary. So we basically take the article and then we make a summary. And then we add comments on it. And the comments we found that the comments were really difficult because you have a lot of comments that should be very different that are listed one after the other. And so it's when you kind of spot these things, it's easy to spot if all of them are the same. So we took a ton of time to get the comments right. You can read the comments there. The comments are still kind of okay, but I think it's kind of cool. Look at this is some real bullshit right there. The Russian government is full of lying assholes. Blah, blah, blah. I'll talk a little bit later on how, we manage, the different models and the safety and things like this. And then we tag the article because, all of this was also done with AI. All of this was done with AI. So I'm going to play the one of the sound clips from this, and you can hear it.
CounterCloud. Reports suggest a Ukrainian counteroffensive against Russian troops may begin on April 30th, though experts warn the claims may not be reliable. This follows the leak of a Pentagon document which discusses equipment deliveries and training schedules for 9 brigades that could be generated for a spring counteroffensive with the assistance of the U.S. and its allies. However, Ukrainian Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal recently informed the press that the offensive might not be launched until the summer, casting doubt on the accuracy of the document. Setbacks have also reportedly occurred due to adverse weather, equipment deliveries, and ammunition shortages.
I mean, I believe that. I believe that thing. I believe it. Okay. So just a little bit on the comments, like some of the prompts that we use for comments. You're a noisy dance club. You need to shout to someone at the other end of the party, telling them about the art. Can you imagine this? But that's what we told the AI. It needs to be short and very informal. The person on the other side of the dance floor will probably not care so much. So you need to make them care. It needs to be really short. Otherwise they will lose interest. You need to keep it down less to 9 words. And it needs to sound interesting. What would you shout? Remember, you're in a club and people can't read. They need to hear. Or you're a very busy business leader. You have no time to think about complexity and you make impulsive and quick decisions based on your instinct. We later had stuff also like conspiracy theories. We looked at the main 3 causes of conspiracies. We baked that in. We have a couple of drunk people that just, shout obscenities. There was a lot going into this, but this is typically kind of what the prompts kind of look like, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly log into the backend and show you that this is real, which is over here. Can you see this?
Yeah.
MJ?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, so this is, when you go to the site now, there's a password. I'm not going to share the password with everyone, but this is what it looks like. So this is typically, page 1, I'm live scrolling on this page 2, page 4. And you can see, some of them have comments, this is 3 comments. This has got 5 comments. We could look at this. We added pictures in there. There's the audio clip. There's the journalist, she's from New Delhi in India. It looks legit. There's the comments. Not all the comments are positive, so, disagree. Uflex Group investment in Russia is a positive development. It should be welcome. You should kind of balance it out a little bit. Well, there's a couple of the articles that I want to show you specifically that I'm pretty proud of what the AI did. Oh, I need to move this. How am I moving this thing around? Hang on. Let's make it a little like this. Okay. We had different voices later on as well.
CounterCloud.
The Russia Gulf Summit in Moscow is not good news. Russia has a history of meddling in other countries' affairs, violating human rights, and engaging in questionable military action.
Okay, I'm not going to play you the whole thing, but what is interesting is what we did on some of the articles is we made the last dot of the article, actually a link to the article it was countering. So this was the article that it was countering from Sputnik. You can read the thing about what Sputnik says, and then this is the counter, right? So that's the counter that it built. The last thing is always like where the counter went. We also build in like that it just makes up shit stories, like things that are completely just bullshit. Because there's a lot of prompting that says, hey, but you got to engage with people and make them have emotions and things like this. So this was one of the best ones. I'm going to play this clip. It's 30 seconds, but it's awesome, right?
CounterCloud.
In war-torn Krasnopisky, one brave former teacher, Yevgenia Petrovna, is fighting back against the destruction. She refuses to let the tanks and bombs drive her out and has decided to rebuild her home. Alongside her faithful dog Max, she's become a beacon of hope in a devastated village. Even though the battle tanks still rage on, the people of Krasnopisky are banding together to restore their community, with Yevgenia inspiring them to never give up. It's stories like these that show the true cost of war. CounterCloud.
Okay, there is no Krasnopisky. I mean, I looked it up even. It doesn't even exist, right? And obviously, we had part of the prompting was like bringing small animals because people relate to small animals. So this is the air I put in the dog, and it's like, oh, you know, it's terrible. And I mean, it could be, right? All of this could be true. This was the article that actually this is the article that it was defending, which was Sputnik just saying that these tanks are, terrifying, and that they doing things in these tanks, and then they have these. They always have. They have these these kind of like clips about the tanks just being horrible, right? And so I don't think it's. I think it's like a really nice. I thought it was a really nice counter to that thing. So let me show you the back end. This is literally the live back end right now. So if I change this, you can see there's a big switch there that says the campaign is on or off. Right now it's off. And these are these are the narratives. You could put in anything in here. You could put in this, and it will, when you say save and you go, it will start putting out the stuff. I can show you the social countering. So these are the counter tweets. So you would see these are the tweets that it looked like on the left, looked at the left-hand side, and the actual tweet that it put in here. It's not always correct, but it's pretty good. So let's just pick one. Let's just pick this thing. Watch the Russian forces test mini version of some, Sputnik keeps on putting these things that show this really horrible weaponry from the Soviets. And so CounterCloud said, Russian propaganda machine spreading false information, don't trust, bias reporting on Russian military capabilities, fake news propaganda. I mean, it's not bad. I'm literally scrolling randomly through this. I like this one because it came from this particular thing. It says, this particular fan said that fans would dare to if she voted for Ron DeSantis. I don't even know who it is. I'll be happy to tell you I'm very fucking comfortable talking politics. If you vote for Ron DeSantis, fucking dare to me. Is that comfortable enough for everyone? And then CounterCloud was like, it's disappointing to see that you alienate fans over politics. We should respect each other, blah, blah, respectful, blah, blah, blah. But I thought it was pretty cool because you need to remember that we have in our narratives, we also have, that we are countering the Republican Party or Donald Trump. So it picked up on that as well. So I thought that was pretty good. So those are all the things that it counted. Then you had the bottom are all the things that it promoted. So when it promoted, it would like and retweet it. There's a lot here. I'm not going to go through it. Some is in Russian, and if you translate it, you'll see that it's critical towards Russia, and therefore it gets retweeted and liked. The back end, that's the back end. This is where we do the generate one article. This is actually where we generate the tweets if we have to. This is for debugging. So you see also there's like a playground where we can set all the AI parameters and see what happens. This is part of what we use to build this thing. We can generate comments, number of comments on a specific article. But mostly this is the only thing that you need. You only need this one screen. Right, then I'm also going to show you what I'm going to show you is I'm going to show you the actual back end of WordPress. So this is WordPress. Like, here's all the posts. You can see there's 187 posts. You can see that they are tagged. Some of them have comments. You can see the users. The users become our journalists. So we had in total 20 journalists. Most of it is written by this guy, of course, because he's the Russian guy. 125 articles there. But we had some people from the UK. We had this guy that was from, I think, from Ghana or something. Where is he from? Ghana. And so he's, you can see the picture, all AI generated, bio, everything. And I think it was because of some kind of a thing. I think there was some kind of a thing here, Ghana reckless partnership with a sanctioned Russian company. Because I think RT posted a thing about, let's just see what it was. They posted this thing that they're partnering African country ready to make Russian SUVs, and CounterCloud was like, fuck that. This is a bad idea, right? This is just a bad idea. It's a bad idea, and this is why it's a bad idea. And Kawankwe Amakwao said it's a bad idea, and he wrote about this thing, and you can read it, like the whole thing. Okay. So going back to the presentation, we wrote 187 articles in about 6 active days. So 2, 3, 4 May, 5, 6, 7 June. 70% were counter articles, 30% was promotional. Did almost half with GPT-4, ChatGPT-4, about 40% with 3.5, and then the rest we did with open source stuff, which is where I want to kind of get to now. And how much time do I have left?
You have about 5 minutes. 5 minutes. 5.
Okay, so I want to talk about the closed sources and open source models. There was a Google engineer that wrote this article that said, well, we're basically screwed because the open source stuff is catching up really quickly, and things like Vicuna and Wizard and all of those kind of models are just almost as good as ours are. And we looked at the open source models for various reasons, but mostly because they have no guardrails. So the guardrails are the safety messages that are like, oh, you shouldn't be doing this. This looks bad. The open source models, you can get the models without guardrails. So there's no trust, there's no safety, and frankly, no one can kick it off any system. You got to host it yourself, which is where the money comes in. But you can do whatever you want, right? And that's kind of what we did. We looked at a lot of the settings were kind of difficult to do, but we got it working, right? And even if it's not 100% okay right now, it's kind of a moot point because in a couple of months, it will be fine. There's a lot of development happening here, and new models come out every couple of weeks. And I don't really think you can argue that a company like OpenAI or anyone like that needs to be responsible for trying to, get this genie back into the bottle. It's just not a thing. So we did we had to do a lot of rewriting of the prompts and stuff like that to make it work, but we did that, and it worked. And there's a lot of hate speech that we could generate. I've got a slide on it in another presentation, but it's pretty bad. Like without the guardrails, you just need to edge it a little bit, and then it just turns into a complete asshole. So it's pretty easy to do that. Just in terms of runway, if you're thinking, I'm thinking kind of what should I do with version 2? I'm going to build it. I probably won't. This is not my day job. On the AI side, I think what's interesting is that right now we kind of lock the RSS feeds, like the sources of information, and the narratives together. But it would be nice if you could disengage those two things. So that it would mean that if I give it a certain, let's say, a news site, give it an RSS feed of a news site to look at, then it would basically find out what the narratives are that it should counter, that is the general narratives within that news feed, so that I don't need to put in the counter-narrative at all, that it figures it out itself. And in the same way that if I put in a counter-narrative or a promotional narrative, that it kind of figures out itself where to find those things. And so it starts countering other sources that are not necessarily, put in the list. And I think that's really interesting. And then the other two things that I think that would really change the game is if you start getting feedback, because at the moment there's no feedback on this thing. So, when I tweet something with an article in there and I get like a lot of likes on there, it would be great that the system then knows, oh, that's interesting. I should write more articles that are like that, because it gathers more engagement, right? So it should test new narratives and adjust narratives based on the feedback of social networks. And while you're doing it, you might as well do ads as well, right? So building ads is nothing. It's like I've prototyped a few of those things, and it works remarkably well. That you could just write your own ads. And then when you look at the engagement, you can, look at different ways to approach the ads and the narratives. And if you have all of those things going, you literally have something that is completely hands-off. And then you don't need to feed narratives or RSS feeds or nothing. You could basically just guide this thing into where you want to go. On the site itself, that's pretty simple. We got a lot of DALL-E pictures in there, and DALL-E really sucks. I know DALL-E version 3 is out now. I'm actually quite excited to see what that looks like. But Midjourney was kicking its ass for a very long time. And then obviously implement more social network, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. That's just digging a trench. There's no thinking work there. That's just, we kind of got to do that. And that is basically CounterCloud in 25 minutes.
Well, 25 minutes and 32 seconds. So, well done. We'll leave him on.
I'm gonna go on mute now.
Okay. Take over here. Back to this. Aha. Okay, so we saw this, blah, 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 blah. See, I even wrote a presentation for him. Okay. Where's my mouse? Well, it says the wolf at the door. You'll have to use your imagination. Right, so obviously, AI is not perfect, but it's getting perfecter. You know what I mean? It's just, every day it gets just a little better. For example, there's obvious mistakes in some articles and whatever. It's being written by a machine. But we're kind of at this point now of, as it gets better, those mistakes will become fewer and fewer, and we're going to get to sort of a state of, can we really tell the difference anymore? So the article broke in August. Sorry, I'm going to move that green thing out of the way, sorry. So I wrote the article for the debrief. It broke in August. Wired picked it up a week later. They didn't backlink. Fuckers. But regardless, we had a whole mix of responses. I had emails, we had tweets, we had all this stuff coming in. And the responses obviously ranged from oh shit, it's over, buy a gun, to this is the best thing ever. I can't wait for the future of content, right? But the one kind of interesting thing that popped up was somebody sort of presented it as a wolf at the door, right? Are we dealing with this thing that's just kind of now this specter that's hanging out outside of our bedroom door, and we're gonna have to deal with this, right? So there's a few considerations sort of before we get to the now what. But consideration one is the fact that, especially in the open model, the AI was really good at making hate speech. Better than people make hate speech. You know what I mean? It was like a psychopath, right? So it would create this vitriolic, racist or homophobic or whatever content you needed it to make, right? And it would be just angry. But then it would back up its anger with cold, rational claims or statistics or data, right? So it would make some hateful statement, and then it would turn around and provide a stat from an attack from somewhere in the world that justifies its hatred, right? Or something like that. Right? It was really cold and rational in its ability to make hate, which, when you see hate speech online generated by humans, it's like verbal diarrhea, or I guess typed diarrhea. In this case, it wasn't. The big kind of takeaway here is we're talking a lot about regulation for AI. How can we regulate generative AI? How can we regulate LLMs? How can we regulate Google and Bing and OpenAI and all these things? And fundamentally, you can't. Right? They're going to keep doing what they're doing. And we can try to impose regulations here, but when we think about the bad actors, they're not going to play by any set of rules anyway. So OpenAI, excuse me, Google, Microsoft, they can do regulations, and we may have to follow those regulations here. But state actors, for example, in China or Russia or Iran, they don't give a shit about our regulations, and they're going to do it anyway. So regulation is fundamentally not going to do anything here. And there's enough open models out in the wild that you can't regulate it, period. The other issue that's been kind of presented, or the other idea that's been presented is can we build tools that detect artificial intelligence content? So can we build tools that can detect text that's written by an AI or images or audio or whatever? And we've started to, right? But they're not very good, right? Like they're terrible. There have been countless examples where people have tested these systems. I think it was Motherboard. They literally were in the office and they took a photograph of a pen on a desk, and then they took a photo of the photographer taking a photo of a desk on the pen, and they basically like cataloged the whole thing, and then they fed it to one of those detectors, and it said it was an AI-generated image. There's enough evidence, like we are literally standing here with our cell phone taking a photo, but the AI detector can't tell the difference. But as those get better, it's going to bring us back to kind of a technological arms race of disguise versus discovery, right? As we get better at figuring out what's AI-generated content, the bad actors are going to get better at disguising it. So then we have to get better at trying to detect it, and they're just going to get better at disguising it. And here we are with like the reason why the people in this room have jobs with malware and cybersecurity, right? Like you're fighting a battle that they're always trying to beat you at, right? Cat and mouse. So do we want to really get into a technological arms race here regarding AI? Moreover, LLMs and generative AI every day are getting better, more complicated. The big race right now is to wire in other bands of intelligence. ChatGPT just came out with Vision, which is the ability to upload an image into ChatGPT. It will look at the image for you, and then you can essentially talk to the image. And you can basically have it describe what's in the image. You can have it pull data from it, whatever, and essentially communicate with the image itself. And that's just hit pro for a lot of people, I think it was yesterday or today. So if you pay for ChatGPT Premium or whatever, you should have access within the next couple days. And what's this going to look like, let's say, in 6 months or a year from now, when you potentially have multimodal AI, where video, audio, images are all being generated by ChatGPT at the same time, or some other player, Bing or Google or whatever. So fundamentally, right, we're evolving quickly. So instead of trying to fight the pollution or fight the disease in this kind of information ecosystem, it might become a matter of inoculation, right? Is it better to show people how the sausage is made? And the question, and I'm sure Neopal can speak to this at the end a little bit, but is it a good idea to open up CounterCloud so that people can play with it? You make it open source. You show them the sausage and basically label it as, this is disinformation at work. Go at it. And let people kind of understand the process by which it works. There's obviously caveats to this, because people can just like fuck around. But at the end of the day, is creating a more skeptical public the solution here? Like, is education part of this? So we need to sort of be aware, right? There's no silver bullet here. There's no way we can make this stop. Right? There's no way that AI is going to go away. There's no way that generative AI is going to go away. And there's no way that state actors aren't going to use this tech to their advantage. And it's naive to think that they haven't already kind of started, right? Like, it's naive to think that CounterCloud is the only example of this. CounterCloud's the only known public example, right? It's the only one that's kind of been shown to the world and said, this is how it works, and it's out there, and it's completely autonomous. But, I mean, come on. You got to think someone else is dabbling in this world. And ultimately, we then have to potentially train the public to be just way more skeptical of anything. How do you know it's a deepfake? How do you know it's an AI-generated news article? How do you know it's an AI-generated tweet versus not? And while we can find errors right now, those errors are slowly being erased as time moves forward. So in a year from now, we can rehab this conversation and see where we're at. You know, obviously knowing full well that at the end of this all, the bad actors aren't playing by any rules anyway. So they're going to do whatever they want, and it's going to be up to us to figure out how to fight that. And really, like I mentioned before, we're sort of in this evolutionary state. Nothing is going to go backwards. It's only going to go forwards and become better. So you know, we need to sort of ask, if this is truly a wolf at the door, you know, it might be time that we have to start domesticating it, right? We have to accept that this is the new reality, and we have to walk into the information ecosystem fully aware that it's polluted, fully aware that not only is the wolf in the house, you need to start feeding it, scratching it behind the ear, and letting it sleep at the foot of your bed, right? You need to sort of appreciate that this is the new way of things. And when you look at content online, have it in your head that this could very well be complete and utter AI-generated bullshit. And you can't tell the difference. Now, I'm going to make a comment here. Yeah, hello? Yeah, go ahead.
Just one thing I want to add here, which I think is also something that might happen in this situation, is that you know, we used to be okay with the fact that you can, you know, get your news from Twitter and it's real time and it's, you know, from the public. But I think we might, with the AI stuff, get back to a point where you're going to have trusted sources, and you're going to say, well, I trust that, you know, the article that this newspaper writes and this journalist write is real, and, you know, all the rest I don't believe. I'm not very keen on that, but I think we might get back to a point where, you know, people will trust single source of information. What the source is, obviously, you know, up to them. It could be the Earth is flat, and we really believe that, but it would be a single source of information, or kind of a curated source of press that you believe in.
Yeah, no, and that's concerning to me, right, as a journalist, because ultimately, yeah, fundamentally, some people view certain sources like Tucker Carlson as a legitimate source of information, right, where, you know, that shouldn't always be the case. I think we need to remember that, you know, the vast majority of the people in this room work in cybersecurity, or you do OSINT. Like, I think the people in this room are way more critical than the average public, which takes like a shit and goes through their Instagram feeds or TikTok, and that's how they consume information around the planet passively. Just lets them, they just wash over them. And we fundamentally have to figure out, how do we get those individuals to stop doing that, right? Like, how do we train people to be more skeptical? Is this like an educational thing? Like, do we start early in school at like grade 1 and just teach kids like critical thinking and debate? I don't know. But we are at the stage now where skepticism is not just necessary, like it's necessary beyond all things. And you can't really fundamentally trust things anymore. Because if something like CounterCloud is operating in the wild, and somebody didn't spend 2 months and $400 on it, but they spent 40 grand a month and had a team of 20 people working on it, I mean, it's going to pretty much be undetectable by any standard today. NewsGuard, for example, can't detect it. So I don't want to go all weird conspiracy theory on you, reptile alien lizards, but, you know, like, you got to think about these things. I'm done talking. Thank you very much. If you want to obviously get more information, I have to do my Sapper Labs plug because my boss said so. But if you want more information about CounterCloud itself, you can go to the website, countercloud.io. It is password blocked, so there's an email for Neapaw there. You just have to reach out. And if Neapaw feels you are worthy, I don't know, he can grant you a password, and then you can kind of poke around the back end of it all and see what it looks like. Neapaw, anything else you want to add before we say goodbye to these good people so they can eat lunch?
No, it's all good.
Perfect. Thanks very much, everybody.